existing? Are we connected? Is this connection? Uh, I don't know. Anyway, here we are. Here we find ourselves again after I don't know, probably like 2 weeks. Um, it finally happened. I guess we have finally found something to continue with. Um, I guess after like I would simply say after having tried to consider to an degree where to start. Yeah, we can properly give it some kind of shape and to say that it has finally happened. Um, there is finally something to say in regards to this whole discussion, and it's more on appropriate term in regards certainly to what we have been discussing and trying to include something that I believe I abandoned before. There is something very I don't truly know exactly where to begin to a certain extent. We are talking about something overly annoying. I will say I will start with that in this whole discourse of that there is a very interesting field. There is a very interesting concept that is you can certainly measure to a certain extent, at the very least, how much things are going to see the light of the day in terms of possibilities of being not simply effectuated, but rather also something that ends up being in any minimally positive way performed and realize that term of this thing has been finished, realizing that way. And there is something along those very same lines in this same field that I think for the longest time is missing from this whole discussion of, yeah, many things can go well, and many things might have the possibility of, in any manner, being realized and whatnot. But it doesn't happen out of nowhere. It is out of ignorance, I guess, to say, yeah, simply because somebody tries, stuff comes into reality, so to speak. It doesn't become, or I don't know, materialize into reality. It is something that you gain by doing certain things, and it is something that you are capable of harnessing as an individual through certain types of actions. And it is inside of that whole realm of a reality that the discussion forgets about the importance of, and that's finally where we find ourselves to be talking about this whole idea of within the field of human efforts, the self. What is even the self, and what is even a minimally easily accessible conception of that? Not something that simply refers people back to that incredibly old definition given by other things, and that doesn't truly assist in any manner with the subject of trying to understand what is being talked about, but rather this whole idea of a more, yeah, I guess, abstract or weirdly composed self. That not that sort, leaving that sort behind, trying to focus on anything we are trying to talk about within that realm, trying to not go so far as to say simply what is the person that does things. as simple as that. It's not so much of a complex idea. The person who acts upon the things that they wish to do. Simple definition, something incredibly easy to follow, and something that shouldn't be so complicated to visualize in any manner, any kind of, so to speak, any kind of human is capable of representing that in the most basic degree, because it is what anyone can do. If the possibility of understanding what is being said exists, therefore, it also exists the capacity of representing the different images given by the particular discourse in this case. And it isn't something so out of the field of cognition, if we are trying to be kind of exact, to say anybody who does any kind of thing is the subject of the self within the realms of what becomes the notion of its own existence, not being at the same time self aware, but simply the understanding of what is the creature which realizes the action, something along those lines, something. The description is verbose, yes, unavoidably it is verbose, but it is the moment in which you see it in action is incredibly simple. If you were to take a step down from the definition, I guess, you might as well try to use an example along the lines of certainly an animal who goes and gathers some food is also a thing which realizes an action. And it's as simple as that, now taken into the field of the human being, something that is, for the purpose of this discussion, overly complicated, or, yeah, overcomplicated in unnecessary ways, not something that is by itself and impossible to harness being, and something with so many sides and with so many complex. No, 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 no. We are simply trying, in any degree, to talk about this whole idea of the human exists. Therefore, it also has, as long as it is capable of doing things and reasoning, it has the capacity to, therefore, in addition to any kind of given action that it might take, it possesses the capacity to any degree to try and minimally take some fragment of its own life, which is expressed in time, so to speak, to understand what is in any way the thing itself that they are doing. It's, I guess, if you try to give it a more complex definition, certainly you're going to arrive later on after trying to process a lot of different points of view, a definition along the lines of something incredibly simple yet correct in terms of the definition itself is the human which exists and which is interested in observing the world, not for the sake of observing, but rather with the interest itself of gaining a proper knowledge based on the understanding both of what it is observing and what it wants out of the very same world in which it resides, is, so to speak, the being who is in any manner given the possibility of obtaining to a better degree any kind of wish that they possess, so to speak. The problem is until that part, or after reaching that conclusion, there isn't truly that much more to say. It just takes a minimal degree of effort to try and think about the logical way of reaching this very same figure, but it isn't anything outside of the plane of what is easily understandable. The problem is trying to apply that in reality because I haven't truly, I, I think, out of a lack of proper understanding in that sense, found the correct reasons or the most easily identifiable ones that exist within the problematic causes that do not allow any given human to perform the tasks that said humans wish to perform. And it, it, it is something that certainly exists too much in the present world. It has always been, to a certain degree, a problem. I do not think there will be a time in which nobody will have no time spent on feeling like the different actions that they might want to take in life are perhaps not the correct ones. It is an unavoidable reality that anybody who exists in so to speak, in the world itself, in the reality, will have to confront to any kind of degree its very own nature of trying to pay attention to what it truly wants and what are the different negative forces that are against their particular wishes. If they were to even be capable of recognizing what they want besides the most basic degree of, yeah, I guess anybody wants to have, so to speak, going back to the beginning, any human should have an interest in sustaining their own life, and any human should be interested, I guess, in continuing with their own existence to some degree, but that isn't truly, besides the most obvious premise, that is nothing. And the problem is in the world itself. The people, those who exist, anybody who you can see has some kind of interest, but there is such a lack of communication, I will say, about this whole idea of, and what do you truly wish for? What is it that you truly possess as a goal? That the big majority, I won't say, being honest, not every single human being, but the big majority so far lives too much inside of the sphere of this previously, so to speak, defined self. You simply are capable of realizing that you have your own existence, so to speak, that you have your own necessities, that you have your own desires, interests, aspiration, goals, dreams, problems, people that you know, a place to which you belong, all of the different things which make the person be what it is. And there is, I wouldn't say simply attachment, that's not the correct way of cataloging this unnecessary degree of affection given to what the initial definition of self is there is a little bit more of shoes that can be extracted the moment in which you try to pay attention to what the world itself is and to what the whole for a lack of a better word, I guess, the whole schema of reality can try to be understood as. And out of that is, in too many ways, I see it something precious, something incredibly valuable. But there is no true interest inside of the self, inside of this whole structure, which serves for the sake of survival, to try and think what could minimally be something better, what could minimally gain something of any other flavor, I would say. Also, yeah, yeah. Thank you for the follow, Flamingo, big, pink, fat Flamingo. Uh, let me also take some water. Anyway, continuing. Not because it is a problem, not because it is something negative or something completely harmful, but rather because, as as I understand it so far, the reality ends up becoming that there are too many things at present that we have accepted as complex, and simply because they might have some sort of difficulty in being understood, there is no more of a real interest in exploring what could be. And inside of that whole field of reality, you end up finding out that the most valuable thing itself, that is the proper appreciation, not simply of what can be and what ends up possessing, so to speak, the qualities and the important final points of any given aspiration, so to speak. If you're trying to give it a proper shape, this whole idea of something that since the Aristotelic times has already been explained, everybody wants to be happy. And what does it mean to be happy? That you need to be capable of sustaining a happy moment throughout the rest of your existence until the moment in which you expire. But to do that, there are certain attributes that need to exist not only within you but also within the whole surrounding world that is in front of you. Everything else that is not the self, not trying to talk about later developments of the theory, the other, the outside, or the enemy, simply what is not the self, as simple as that. All of that is decontextualized and made a more complex thing than what it truly needs to be. And all of that robs the individual out of the possibility of properly seeing what is the value behind doing anything that can be called worthy of doing, not simply because it is something interesting to do and it ends with that point and there is nothing else to be said, but rather because it seems at a first glance or based on the impressions that one ends up having after hearing so many other people who, quote unquote, tried to observe the same thing, have already shared with you, it ends up being something completely absurd to think about, and it ends up being something completely unnecessary to try and process, because the world out of nowhere becomes a dark and sinister place, and many of the things that anybody can wish for are unattainable dreams, because reality is not a real place in which you can do things, but out of nowhere it ends up becoming this incredibly twisted narrative of, and you appear in the world out of nowhere one day, and you are created just to suffer and to continue with the suffering, and perhaps if you were to be crazy enough, you are going to do one of the worst things possible, that is to bring in any other creation into reality, because you simply want to calm your own suffering by seeing somebody else exist besides your own self. This whole, I don't think there is any other term besides nihilistic view of, and the world is without any real meaning. Wow. Incredibly surprising definition. It's it's an incredibly absurd way of thinking. It's it's meaningless itself. The manner in which anybody tries to stop and contextualize the world that is around them, that gets so much predicated nowadays of, yeah, it is fine to discard any possibility of seeing this world as something that possesses a potential, possesses any kind of valuable thing that might as well be used later on for the advancement of any superior goal that not the self itself might have, but living in the world of humans, this wonderful thing of the human species as a whole. One day, dreams, this whole idea of one day you might as well never as die, you might as well end up completely dead, forgotten. There will be no more what you used to call yourself, because you will be already gone thousands of years ago. But the importance was having at the very least worked on anything that ended up minimally being useful for anyone who ended up coming later on. This whole point of, and no matter what happens, if there is anything that can be said to be certain, we don't know what happens after that, but we know what keeps happening the moment in which somebody dies. That is, everything else keeps going. Besides that particular person, every single other thing keeps functioning. It is an incredibly unnecessary abstraction to out of nowhere remove the person from the rest of the world and to say, yeah, it's more valuable to be incredibly self-indulgent in how you experience what is this act of being alive than to enjoy any kind of minimally meaningful minimally meaningful activity, something that might be refreshing to do, not because of wow, this I am feeling how my ego is satisfied, because I am simply doing something that by itself is pleasurable. There are 1,000 things that are pleasurable by themselves. There is a whole world of vices that is possessed of the most pleasurable things, and there are already incredible amounts of people inside of that. But there is a certain reason as to why we have, so far at the very least, minimally started to recognize that certainly there are some particular elements of life that you cannot indulge so much in. So it is to do something, or it is about doing something that feels good in the longer run, something that feels minimally better in the whole experience of life. And this whole idea of, if there is something minimally well explained instead of so many type of religious explanations and so many sacred texts, if you want to call them that, it is the human exists, and there is this myth of the moment in which it dies, it might as well be reborn into the future. This whole idea of the moment in which your life ends in your present body, it simply gets reincarnated into something else. Whichever kind of conception do you wish to take it as, there are hundreds of religions who try to talk about very similar concepts, because the fundamental idea is, even if it is impossible to properly get it at a first glance, the moment in which the life of the individual ends, nothing else truly changes. You cannot abandon the whole world simply because in a moment it seems bad that what is being experienced by one individual justifies out of nowhere nothing else ever happening, and no other thing getting any kind of attention put onto that. It's the idea of, if you want to try and use some more modern terms, the society itself will always advance, even if all the founding individuals who created the first type of society itself have already long time ago abandoned everything that can be called this world, even if we have already forgotten about any human who was present, so to speak, at the moment in which the first word itself was uttered, to the moment in which we get the possibility even to try and communicate between each other. So we have a literally zero idea where everything begins. And it doesn't mean that simply because we lost access to that information now we cannot move forward, or because the originator of what is the present, so to speak, is no more alive. There is nothing else that can be done, and we have lost the direction to which we are moving ourselves. It is this unnecessary way of seeing I exist, and if I were to not exist, everything else would be meaningless. It is this incredibly presumptuous idea of, yeah, it's so important to be self-centered. It is so rewarding to be incredibly selfish. At which point anybody gains any kind of true value or true satisfaction by doing such things, at which moment it is that the idea itself, the explanations that were already given hundreds or thousands of years ago, aligned to any degree with this idea of, yeah, simply, I do not think it will be all that necessary for me to do any particular thing that might be complex because I might have a bad time, so I might as well not try to endure such a painful experience. After all, why would I personally submit myself to any of that? This whole acceptance of what is this narrative and what is this incredibly negative way of existing within everything else. It is so much of an attraction to what doesn't even begin to be a proper conception of the self. It is so much of an reductive view of the world that the moment in which the individual is minimally presented with the possibility of an even bigger reality, I am pretty sure everything by itself makes sense. It's if there is something that has been repeated enough times, it's what seems to be logical enough end up becoming the reality of those who were capable of observing such a truth of the world, so to speak. The moment in which the human gains the capacity to see beyond what is its own existence, not as something that is to be completely submerged in the deepest of the desires or whatever you want to say, but something that is truly full of a satisfaction that nothing else can bring. That idea of, and I was finally given the possibility, minimally shown the way in which I can try. Not that I am completely ensured, but I can minimally try to do my own actions and perform what I find to be interesting inside of this whole field of a human experience. And it's, I will say, it's to a certain degree depressing to hear that it never gets talked about, something like that, that out of nowhere, tracing back, we are in the same place. We have been in the same place for hundreds of years. We haven't really gained anything because everything revolves around this way of seeing what is the person and what can be a human. This idea of there might be someday one individual, no one else, that can gain, that can experience a good life, and perhaps it will be good enough to have certain sacrifices, not that are done for the greater good, that are done when you are capable of thinking out the whole world, so to speak, but something that is, and you know what? I will sacrifice the happiness of others because I want to keep on feeding only and without even trying to think about anything else. My own satisfaction and my own existence, and all of that story narrative of, yeah, It's fine to live in a world in which you gain absolutely nothing, in which everything that you have will be gone the moment in which you die. So why will you even care about gaining any kind of real value out of this world? Why will you care about earning anything that possesses a certain meaning? What's the point behind doing something that could very well be used by someone else if, after all, the moment in which you die, there is no more you? So why care? Why is there a necessity to care? And I don't think it is one of those self-answering questions that so many institutions of the present like to present, in which out of nowhere, by pure logic, you arrive to hidden argument, so to speak, in which you see maybe if it is so important to live a life, and it is so important to serve, I don't know, my nation, then it means that I must certainly be obliged to do what I can to contribute to my place of birth, and to give, at the very least, to that tiny home in which I was brought up, something that can make it a better place for all my fellow citizens. It is something more along the lines of a lie. It is certainly controversial to say a lie, I guess, but the reality is that it's an argument that doesn't truly serve anything. And what do you do the moment in which everything ends? The moment in which, at the very least in the present world, we are so much focused on still on the self, this sense of self, of belonging to something, of being a particular thing, of being a particular person instead of a particular community, instead of a particular country. What happens the moment in which, maximum example, your whole home gets destroyed because of something like the war? What happens then? What happens with the happiness of the human after no more things can be created inside of that place that you used to call so much of a free space? What is the concept that you utilize the moment in which all that you used to appreciate so much and all that you used to find interesting instead of the previous society that was enabling you, so to speak, is the completely dominated by the next system? What happens at that instance of the world? What is the solution to such a destruction of everything else? You cannot appreciate any of those things, not because, oh yeah, you lack proper, because there is nothing to appreciate after that. What will you do? Will you remove yourself from the rest of the universe, so to speak? This whole idea of, and yeah, some people have certain degrees of problems, so they are given the possibility, and it is something acceptable, that they never try to live in the present or think about the future, that everything that they can do so far is live in the past and think about what used to be, and not important remark, not because they have a condition, a problem, something that doesn't let them see the future, that doesn't let them experience the present, but rather because we don't give a single fuck about what those people do. we don't care enough about what they are thinking about, what they are in any way experiencing, to try and understand why somebody out of nowhere forgets about everything and keeps on feeding once again this incredibly twisted image of the self that we ourselves have created and which no more can be sustained in this world, that to a certain extent, as long as they are not capable of in any way finding a solution, has utterly failed them. What what's the point in giving up so many things if the freedom itself, which the self can so much enjoy, is found inside of abandoning the rest of the world? How is it that you can say that the present is in any manner something minimally satisfactory? How is it that a person can try to argue that their life is minimally good if you're not even trying to give yourself some time to think about what is everything else around you? At which point the incredibly long line of lies doesn't become incredibly obvious enough? At which point doesn't the individual once again look back and see that what they are doing is in no way interesting? There is nothing that brings joy to their present life. This whole idea, instead of this narrative, we can finally mention something else. There is this particular line of, and certainly you have people who are quite interested in having a particular purpose, whichever is it that they have defined by themselves. It is still something that you, once again, define by yourself. There is no way in which you can talk about any concept of a reality about this world, a mode of existence, or whatever you want to say about this present, that doesn't involve in any way what is an idea that you accept, be it you can later on discuss, be it because you see it convincing enough, or because you were forced through some type of manipulation that the outer forces of the invisible world have. Whichever kind of way you want to go, it is still something that either you were coerced into or something that you fully out of your own volition accepted. And instead of that whole realm of self defined goals, wishes, once again, aspirations, dreams, whichever word you want to use about what anybody can want about life, instead of that whole realm of things, something wonderful happens, and that is in the present, you can see people who are doing things that they completely hate. Not because there is a greater thing to gain later on, because there is not enough interest at any given point in the whole chain of the society to minimally try to nudge these people into realizing, yeah, and you know what? Life can be incredibly wonderful. It can be literally the most amazing thing that you will have. How can you minimally think that it isn't in any way worth living if no particular surrounding structure is demonstrating you the opposite? How can you try to say that this world is devoid of any value if no other possible already encounter with the reality fully demonstrates that it is only a world constructed out of selfish and completely ignorant views about everything else. It is this necessity of justifying. Yeah, I have my particular problems, so I cannot therefore do anything else out there. I am no more a person who can enjoy the outer world. I have been reduced to a miserable being who will await for the end of their existence or something along those lines because I cannot enjoy doing anything. I do not possess any potential. I do not think to any degree. I have the right to do what I might see as a possibly useful action. And that is the moment in which, once again, to a certain degree, wow, nothing new is being said, but that's the reality. Everything else fails the person of the modernity, the moment in which they enable such things. How is it acceptable to hear such a narrative? At which point don't you stop and think to try and see, minimally realize that indeed it is utterly meaningless to give up so many things? There are so many other pleasures, not out of a completely self centered desire to keep on experiencing immediate pleasure after immediate pleasure. Once again, what has been at this point already mentioned, something that is good for the sake of the prolonged and ensured satisfaction of the future, of the human itself, and of everything else that will come after the present human is gone. That whole system of things that is embedded inside of the possibility of the present person who tries to see the world and who is also revealed in front of it, how at the very same time everything that will be is also existent, not to the degree to which it is materialized, but to the degree to which it is minimally cognized and being portrayed inside of their mind, because it is the fundamental state of what we have since so long ago defined as a dream or a vision of the future, something that can be pursued. And I don't know, man. It's it's not that complicated. I think so. It's. I feel certainly like I have so far. I wouldn't say failed. We haven't ended, but it is the complete avoidance of the important part, so to speak, the untold answer. That's so many ways of thinking proud themselves in using. The point is, at the moment in which any human is given the possibility of thinking, of observing the world and trying to have any particular type of cognition about what comes after that, what comes after the moment in which something fails, the doors also open to everything else. But it doesn't mean that failure is ensured or that any kind of action is unnecessary, because at the end of the day, if failure is ensured, no matter what you do at some point in the chain of command or the future chain of actions that will supposedly lead to your so desired future will end up then unavoidably failing, and the future that you wish so much for will never come. That way of thinking is not simply irrational, it's completely, once again, nihilistic. There is no point in giving up so much agency, giving up so much of what could be called the sweets of life. What's this acceptance of, yeah, somebody once told me, I do not want to think anymore. I do not want to be inside of my own head. And it's acceptable to hear that. It's understandable, completely understandable. But it is acceptable for me as an individual to hear that and to not give any reply whatsoever. I have no necessity of acting inside of that situation. I have no need whatsoever of trying to minimally show someone who is, besides very minute details, very meaningless details, almost the literal same thing as me, that it is possible to enjoy existence. I have no right to do that. I have no obligation whatsoever to show anyone that life can be good. I have no need, no desire to do that. At which point can I keep calling myself a human if everything that I see doesn't move me to do anything whatsoever? If this whole world is full of situations that can be not out of incredibly immense efforts, decades long fights and discussions with complete systems in a matter of days or hours, simple routes that need minimal action, minimal degrees of interest from anybody that are so easily observable in reality when they happen. The moment in which that whole idea of even to the self itself, things that make the future better simply because they do not let it be like what the past used to. The moment in which, and that's what I was referring to, even when you wake up and you decide to, you know what, today I, myself, will decide to not stay in bed for the next 3 hours and do absolutely nothing because I have no responsibility. No one else is going to tell me what I need to do. So fuck everything. I don't need to do anything useful. I don't have any obligation. I don't see any reason behind it. And I will do it and I will feel like shit after doing it. And to see it and to accept it and to see someone else and say, yeah, good action, incredibly good action that you took there. Certainly the most satisfying one. Instead of continuing to prolong the pain, the moment in which one day you do something, you go out of your way and you see, wow, it certainly was a change of pace to wake up maybe, maybe 40 minutes after being in bed. To do something that feels good outside of this place in which I supposedly have quote unquote fun, which leads me every single day to be completely dried, but which I have gotten accustomed to call fun, quote unquote. This this whole system of things that break it so much every other problem instead of that sphere of reality. But it can be changed. Once again, the moment in which anybody does anything to minimally go out of their way, they realize. And indeed, the world wasn't so incredibly horrible. Indeed, reality wasn't so embedded in the most horrible things, and the whole world itself had nothing more than pain to show to me. I could have gotten to live a minimally pleasurable experience, an existence that had any particular type of meaning because I was given the chance to do so, and I was minimally now finally freed to do what I wished to for so long. But there is at least so far in the present, if nothing else, at the very least it's true that the system fails in showing everyone that indeed reality can be good. It doesn't need to be made up sort of delusion which has some composite parts which minimally feed into the rest of the meaningless existence that the human has. It can be something that as a whole every single day can be satisfying to go through. It can be something that even in the moments in which things feel bad is good because you know that what you are doing, that's one of the most satisfying things itself, that you have a reason behind what you do. Once again, the meaning behind what anybody does, this so important value of, yeah, and what is your meaning of life? What have you yourself defined as your own meaning in life? What is it that you started to desire to do? What is it that if you were to say tomorrow you are going to die, you want to see it completed today? What is it that sort of fueling, sort of motivating fire inside of every single human being? That truly pleasurable thing that in so many ways has gotten so incredibly insulted and so incredibly depreciated and so abandoned at some point. Yeah, you don't need to establish something that feels good. You only need to align with what the present is showing to you, and you need to simply keep on satisfying these artificially created quote unquote necessities. You don't feel them, you are going to be completely fine, but we are going to keep on pressuring you into thinking that they are necessary and that you are going to be completely crazy if you don't get this next piece, this next game, this next media, this next product. Holy fucking shit, what a boring system it is. But yeah. Basically that, I guess. It's it's too much of the same story. Without any real change. Meaningful change, I guess. But the moment in which the person is given, at the very least, the possibility to try and think for itself what might be after that, it finds out maybe, maybe there was something that felt minimally well, minimally good, or that was minimally justified, minimally, so to speak. I don't know. I am still struggling with that, so I cannot fully decide if it is just an illusion that keeps, so to speak, the human from ending itself, so to speak, this whole idea of in an absurd world, you're going to justify what you are through the craziest of the explanations. And because you were capable of cognizing such a way, it will make complete sense to you, and you won't need any other thing. It will be a completely finished puzzle. You don't need any other addition to that because you were the one who constructed all of it. For you, it is understandable, so no more worries. Even if the goal that you defined is completely selfish once again, it makes sense to you, so there is no other narrative that you need to be paying attention to. But I think if I have to be real, I think it is too much of an abandonment of the present, so to speak. The person, once again, we don't exist in a void, in a completely strange reality or something that has nothing to deal with the rest of the world. You don't you don't just have out of nowhere a piece of what is your present shown only to you and that has no need of being intermingled with the rest of the world. Unavoidably, as long as things keep being the same, if everyone else were to disappear, you will, in, a, in an incredibly lower amount of time than what anybody can ever think about, you are going to die. There is no present world without the rest. There is no one without the others, so to speak. Once again, this whole cognition of, yeah, everything is a constant struggle, a constant fight. It is you against the world. No, it isn't. No, in no way it is like that. If everyone else were to abandon their responsibilities, this whole world would self-destruct almost in an incredibly rapid manner. It is stupid to think out of nowhere. Yeah, this world, this world in which we inhabit, certainly doesn't care. To which day do you think it doesn't care that literally every single human being that is so far existent plays a minimal important role? Maybe you cannot appreciate it and you cannot say, wow, this particular individual justifies everything else. But every single piece has its own attributes and its own parts of importance that are minimally useful to consider. Minimally, at the worst case scenario. And that is because we don't give ourselves enough of a chance to try and properly think what could in any other way be called interesting or meaningful. But it's still, I think, a world that is worth completely living, certainly. Not like, oh wow, we have at the very least so far right now all of these problems and also have all of these solutions, but the problems outweigh the solutions. No, it doesn't work like that. There are too many things that are precious so far. There are so many experiences that are so wonderful to have. It is once again, instead of this line of the self, the person forgets too easily what is the beautifulness of having also those shared moments with others. It is this narrative of twist the hands that says, yeah, you don't need to get out the outside. You don't need to minimally try and see what could happen if you were to believe that perhaps things could get better, that perhaps this world could have any kind of meaning. You don't need to do that. No, no. It's it's certainly dark to live in such a world, but at the same time, it cares so little. On the other hand, that if you truly care, you can try to change it and gain the possibility of changing it and avoiding the so incredibly obvious self destruction. What was the point of carrying out any particular gain if what you were seeing in front of you in the longer run was a completely unsatisfactory disappearance of your life? I don't know. I all I know is I haven't talked and read for like an hour. Uh, I have absolutely no idea, but yeah, I think I covered the most basic parts of the self inside of this whole idea of human efforts. I guess there are certainly parts that are hard to mention. I mean, I remember when I was thinking out this, I think it was like at the beginning of the week or so when I finally said that I should be starting to speak about this. There was something that I remembered, and that is something very funny, very interesting. Is also sometimes how, even inside of oneself, there doesn't exist just the self itself being incredibly repetitive. The person isn't just one being, so to speak, in many ways. Not because of shamanistic theories, but rather because you realize yourself. There are a lot of wishes that you have that you can in no way accomplish simply because you play against yourself. And on the other hand, somehow the actions that you take go against what you truly wish for, and somehow the things that you aspire to, the dreams that you have, end up not simply slipping from your hands in a sort of you almost had it. You realize completely, if you live enough such a type of life like that one, that you were your biggest enemy. That you did everything against what you truly cared for. That you removed from your present every single possibility that what you cared, what you could have had, was negated simply because inside of you there is also something that seems to be so much against what your so called self wants. But once again, even in those circumstances, there is something incredibly wonderful still, and that is the possibility of recognition, the moment in which the person gains any degree of awareness of the problem. It can minimally try to trace how to try and solve it. Proper understanding allows proper action taking, and it isn't such a complicated recipe, but it becomes at some point in once again this incredibly weird world a twisted message of yeah, you also might as well want to try and see if what you are doing might as well not be the most interesting thing. Perhaps And only perhaps there might be things that you could gain if you were to truly use your time on truly, truly useful things. No, 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 no. It's the discussion of I want to do something, but I know no matter how hard I try, I cannot find it to fully do it myself. That one thing that I see so necessary. Not because I want to harm myself, but because I really want to gain this particular benefit. I see that even if it takes so much effort, it is worth doing. It starts, it's the most fundamental part. If the human can't even live with its own existence, how can it be expected to live within the rest of the society? You can minimally negotiate with it yourself, with what you have and what you want and what you cannot do and can do and whatever you want to say or excuse. But with so many other people out there, there is no such degree of opportunities. It's almost an obligation to try and realize that yes, if you haven't made a peace with what you want and accepted, for example, the possibility that you might need to improvise on your plans, you won't get what you truly aspire to. There are some people who, no matter how hard you try, will never do what could be so useful for the both of you. So, what's going to be the next play? To simply get angry and to negate from your present any other possibility of a gift, of an obtainance of what is to be called the dream, the aspiration, to simply abandon all of that, nothing else. At which point does it make sense to be once again someone so pessimistic about the world? It's it's a multi-layered problem, indeed, but it doesn't mean that it is impossible to think about to any degree. That's the lie of the modern world that you hear about all of this and say, oh my god, I cannot believe it. It will take me all my life to try and find something interesting and to minimally get going. It isn't as basic as that, I guess. It isn't as incredibly negative as all of that. I find it to be. Also, welcome the house. Good day. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is still something like a not so complicated way of thinking about the world. I I I don't like when it gets overly weird. Let's say when it is made overly weird. I You can hear about all of that too many times. The experience of the present is in many ways, something intriguing because you find out how much, so to speak, the general people, the general society, sorry, is demotivated, I guess. But on the other hand, it's just a time. It doesn't mean that it is going to be the future, the definite future of everything else that is to come. That there will never be another happy day or whatever you want to say. It's it's just an instance. It's it's too much centering on what is now. It's forgetting about the future, forgetting about what one truly wants. Nobody wants to suffer. Even if you hear something like, yeah, pain is the only real sensation, or something along those lines. The moment in which you think about it, you realize indeed it is minimally entertaining, interesting, fulfilling to try and use my time on doing something that feels good to any degree. Not because, once again, what has been said already today, it is an instantaneous reward that will vanish as soon as I realize that I can obtain another one of those. It is something that is based upon I can earn a true sense of happiness because I can also see it, be the reality, not only of mine, but of anyone who is around me. And in the final analysis, in the complete fulfillment of such a dream, I guess, of anyone who were to exist at the same time as me, because there is nothing better than to know that certainly what is done has some sort of value. It isn't such a negative reality, such a devoid, negative world. It's strange to see it as such, and it obviously doesn't sit right with anyone who tries to live in this present, so to speak. How is it justified to say that, yeah, the person is completely deprived from its possibilities, from its possible gains, from its chances of obtaining what could be called something great? What's at which point does it become unnatural for the individual to keep on hearing the same negative? I wouldn't say propaganda, but you could classify it as that if you want. It's a. I hope. I hope. At the very least, for me, it seems to be a natural conclusion. A completely logical and easily traceable conclusion. That the moment in which you think about this stuff, you come to the realization that indeed the world isn't so fucking horrible. It only is made to look like that, but it doesn't need to keep on looking that same way. But yeah, and also, hello, son. I hope you're doing well. Uh, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess I need to think also what else might I be missing instead of this whole discussion of the self and whatnot. I mean, it's an incredibly, in that sense, I do believe it is quite complex. It has too many layers, so it takes quite a lot of time to properly explore. It has too many sides, so it takes a lot of patience to minimally find a footing on in terms of where we are at and what is even the point of trying to talk about something like this. It's, I mean, I know something that I forgot to talk about. For example, something incredibly important inside of this very same field is how can anyone try to take the challenge of living in this reality, I guess, because it isn't a lie to say that life is a challenge. It's quite a certainty to realize that, yeah, there are quite a lot of hardships to overcome, even for the persons who have the easiest lives, who have everything served in a golden plate, so to speak. There are still necessary things to do. And one of the many problems of this world is how little importance is given once again to the most common nominal factor, so to speak, something that any single individual possesses, something that can be found in all of them, not something that you think about or something that you imagine might be a reality far ahead in the future, something that is in the present, something that you see right now, something that you experience at every single instance, that is the possibility of wishing for things and the possibility of acting on behalf of those dreams. Something like that gets unnecessarily downplayed. Why would it be reasonable to say, yeah, the world is hard, therefore I cannot ever accomplish what I want? It should be one of the most joyous things to know that what you want will not be instantaneously given to you. One of the most satisfactory things is to see the fruit of your efforts, to find out that what you are working for ended up turning right, even if in the way it had errors and it failed in previous instances, and it took you some trial and corrections and whatever else it was needed. There is a point in which things can be accomplished, but it becomes somehow a weird thing to say. The reality that we inhabit predicates that it isn't necessary to talk about any of that at all. At which point doesn't it feel irrational to keep on seeing absolutely all of that? But yeah, the point itself was, and the individual is full of capacities. The reality is such a wonderful place to live in. There are so many given factors that enable anyone to accomplish so much of what they wish for that it is not simply demotivating to say, yeah, not everything can be accomplished. Nobody fucking knows. So much overconfidence on such a statement of saying, yeah, you might not get what you want. And what if you do? What if you were to properly work on what you want, define it, and be capable of creating a plan? What if you were to be a reasonable human being who is possessed of the capacity of observing the present and realizing that, yeah, there is a way in which I can mobilize myself and try to accomplish what I want? What if you were to do that? What if you were to be endowed with such capacities? What if you were to, instead of feeling completely overwhelmed because you decided to plan something that seemed to be hard, move in accordance to what is minimally a useful plan, a, an understandable and minimally traceable plan? What if you were to do that? And what if you were to have success? Nobody ever knows. So much overconfidence in saying, no, yeah, no matter what you wish. Human wishes are fragile. You might fail. Maybe you might fail. Doesn't mean that it is ensured for you to fail. But I don't know. Besides that tiny thing, I truly don't know. There are so many other similar arguments, but the main point, at the very least, what was presented instead of that, I guess I don't know. I I think yeah. I mentioned at this point most of the stuff that I wonder. So I am happy. Also, we are 5 minutes. No more guitar, please. No more. Thank you very much. There we go. 5 minutes of guitar riff for the nose. But yeah, I I think that's everything that I have to say so far. The self is not so hard, but not so easily ignorable at a first glance, I guess you will say. It's still weird to see it boils down to something so basic or something so powerless, when in reality it certainly isn't. It certainly is not something so fragile. But yeah, I guess I'm done. So yeah, um, I guess time to say goodbye. I I don't truly have anything else to add. It, it has been a pleasure, but this is everything about the self so far. No more things to add about this particular side of the story. That's everything that I can say. We will see what has the future in store for us. I I being honest, I wasn't even thinking this was going to be like more than 3 episodes long, so to speak. Yet here we are on the fifth one. I think we should at the very least certainly have one more probably about the future, and after that perhaps the final conclusion, but we will see. Anyway, I have nothing else to say in regards to human efforts, and in regards instead of that about the self. But I hope it was minimally understandable. Any of what I was talking about. I mean, that's one of the interesting things, of existing. That you're given this definition of, you're given the possibility of praying for the things that you care, not in an incredibly Catholic way, in an unnecessarily complicated manner that only relates and is minimally proximal with the idea of, yeah, you have your own prayer to your own deity, so to speak. No, 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 no. This way of, I simply want things to go the way in which I envision them. I simply hope for things. The most basic way of possessing any sort of hope. Believing that perhaps there could be something great, and there could be a certain degree of happiness to be found if things were to go in the direction that one wants them to go, and that perhaps it could happen that things will move in that direction. Yeah, I guess that. The self doesn't need to be so much involved, surrounded by so much negativity. That's one of the biggest errors of the present in so many ways. But yeah, I I truly have nothing else to add. So yeah, thank you for listening. And I don't know, go be enjoy yourself. I guess that's the proper response. Uh, I am being quite cheap in saying all of this. I'm simply not ready because I quote unquote tired, but you might already know me. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for your time. Take care. Whenever we can, we're getting back here. I don't even know when, but probably. I don't know. Expectations, they are what? The self. Distractions of the self that you expect stuff like me going to finish this sentence. So yeah, don't have many of those. By the way, uh, they are no good. Thank you very much. Have a nice one. Think a little bit at the very least. Think, enjoy thinking, enjoy it because it can be enjoyed, not because somebody tells you that. Find a way to think about the world for fuck's sake. Anyway,